I remember I was probably 20 years old. And so it's been 10 years ago or so. I was probably 20 years old, and I was sitting in a Carmen concert. And in the middle of his concert, he said something that freed me. It began a freedom in me that I so desperately needed at the age of 20. I was so bogged down. I was so depressed. I was so anxious. I was so fearful and discouraged, because I was convinced that I was missing the will of God for my life. Because I knew the calling on my life is to preach the gospel around the world, but I wasn't traveling around the world. I wasn't free to do as I knew God wanted me to do in ministry. I was working a secular job, and under a heavy load that I put myself under, thinking that I was wasting my life and missing the will of God. And suddenly, in the middle of this concert, I don't know if it's planned or not, but Carmen makes this statement. He says, you need to know that God wants you in His will more than you could ever want to be in His will. Now, that sounds so simple, but it began a freeing process in me. Because I couldn't change my circumstances at that moment. I was where I was. That was where I needed to be. And when he said that, I just began to breathe a little bit and rest and say, I know what God said about my future. My present doesn't look like my future, but I'm not going to live bent out of shape in my present, because it doesn't exactly look like the future God said He had for me. I can rest it confidently in my present, because more than I want to be in that perfect place of God's will in the future, He who called me, who loved me, who died for me, He wants it more than I want it. He's going to get me where I need to go.